Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Module 2 of Align and Accelerate. This module is going to have a lot more content than the first one. The first one is really more lighter to really help you get going with your project and your goals, to start deconstructing it, breaking it down, understanding how to look at it, and then starting to use the sheets that I've created, which you'll see in this module. I'm going to start explaining it in a little bit more depth, why they're important for you to use, and how that framework will really help you to succeed with the goals and projects that you have. So I'm going to start off by sharing my screen again like I did in the first module, and then we're going to get going from there. So module 2 is called Keys to Success, and part 1 is Keystone Habits. The second part is connecting your long-term goals today. Third part is momentum. Then we talk about defending your calendar. And the last part is choosing what to work on. Choosing what to work on is really key and critical. When I was doing research for this course, this is something that came up again and again where people didn't have an understanding what to focus on next, whether that was in their goals or in their businesses, is they really wanted to figure out what's going to be the most efficient thing for them to work on. So that's something that we tackle right away in this module and explain to you a little more of how you should be looking at your projects and what to be focusing on. So part 1, Keystone Habits. What is a keystone habit? A keystone habit is a habit that triggers bigger and better habits. So the way to think of it, it's like a domino effect that's going to have an impact on your life. And for example, Todd Herman at Peak Performance Athlete, he calls these trigger habits. And let's say I want to start working out before I go to work in the mornings. So in order for me to achieve this goal, one thing that I can do before I even step a foot into the gym is to start packing my gym bag the night before. So that way I'm prepared. When my alarm clock goes off in the morning, I can wake up, grab my gym bag, start heading to the gym and start working out. So it's a small example of something that takes about 5 minutes to do. You prepare your gym bag, and that allows you haven't even set foot in the gym yet, but you've already prepared yourself to succeed in the morning and potentially get to the gym, start working on it, and start fulfilling that goal. And that is an example of a trigger habit or a keystone habit of something that's small, but it's going to have a bigger impact on your life. And so if you pick these correctly, and I really like this image, it's one of those things where it's going to have a domino effect where things are going to start unraveling for you, because one habit can lead into other aspects of your life, and it's going to have a positive all-around impact on you. So what is the first keystone habit we want to create? It's going to have a domino effect on you achieving your goals in the project that you're working on. And so the first thing we want to be tackling is connecting your future goals to today. And so in all the work that I studied and the books that I read prior to developing this course and while developing this course, again and again, an idea that comes up is you got to connect your far off future goals back to today and what you're working on. And that really allows you to stay focused and understand that what you're doing today is valuable and is going to help you to achieve the goal that you want to reach one day. So Steve Jobs said you cannot connect the dots looking forward, you can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust the dots will somehow connect in your future. And I'm calling bullshit on this. When it comes to goal setting, we need to know the finish line. We need to know exactly where we're going. We have a specific target, and we're constantly working towards reaching that target. What we need to do is bring back that future goal to the present and really understand what it is we need to work on today to really be able to ensure that we can cross that finish line one day. And so there's this idea that came across in the One Thing, and it's a principle, an exercise that's really had an impact on my life. And it's the best way that really, for me, helps me to deconstruct my future goal into the present moment without really having to stress or do a bunch of exercises around it. And so in the One Thing, they talk about living by priority and purpose is a key component of the book. But they pose this question of, what's the one thing I want to do someday? And this is your someday goal. Now, based on your someday goal, you create a 5-year goal. Based on my someday goal, what's the one thing I can do in the next 5 years? Now, from this, you break it down. Based on my 5-year goal, what's the one thing I can do this year? Based on that, based on my 1-year goal, what's one thing I can do this month? And then you distill it even further. Based on my monthly goal, what's the one thing I can do this week? And then again, based on my weekly goal, what's the one thing I can do today? And then again, based on my daily goal, what's the one thing I can do right now? And that's an example of how you can take your far off goal and bring it back to this moment right now. So for example, say like one day I want to be a New York Times best-selling author. One thing that I could probably do this morning right now is write 500 words towards a blog post or anything. It doesn't even have to be for that book that I want to be a New York Times bestseller, but I need to do something to start practicing my writing skills in this moment if I intend to achieve this far off goal of being a New York Times bestseller one day. And so this is a great exercise of taking like a really big goal and really deconstructing it into a simple thing that we can do right now, and understanding that the little steps that we take each and every day have an impact towards achieving our far off goals. And so the image in the book, The One Thing, is they have this domino effect where you can see what you're doing right now can actually, if you line it up accordingly, can knock down that daily goal, that weekly goal, that monthly goal, that 1 year goal, and that 5 year goal. And that someday goal doesn't matter how big or ridiculous or out of crazy it might seem right now, because if we do the right actions, anything's possible. We can start achieving those goals that we have for ourselves in the far off future. Now, another idea that came up while I was doing research for this course is this idea of one oil barrel at a time. And this is from the book, Eat That Frog by Brian Tracy. And this is a quote. It says, "One of the best ways to overcome procrastination is to take your mind off the giant task and to focus on the single task in front of you." And so even writers, going back to my book example, people talk about writer's block. You know, when you have writer's block, even if you focus on just writing anything in the moment, and I've heard this is a great exercise for overcoming writer's block, it's just saying, I'm going to write 500 words, whether it's gibberish, good or bad, doesn't matter. It's about focusing on what's in front of you. And that really helps you to start moving forward. And so Brian Tracy, he gave this metaphor in his book where he was in the Sahara Desert, and there's this part of the Sahara Desert where it's flat and there's no visible landmarks. And so how do you cross a desert that has no visible landmarks without getting lost? Because where there's no water, there's no food, you don't want to get stranded. And especially if it's just bare surface, it all looks the exact same. It's a very plausible thing as you start crossing it. And so what the French did is across this giant 500-mile bare desert is they started putting oil barrels every 5 miles. And the reason being is because every 5 miles, you could look back and find an oil barrel, or you could see the oil barrel in front of you. And this way, you don't always see the exact end destination where you're going to, but you see the oil barrel in front of you and the oil barrel behind you. And Brian Tracy posts this as a metaphor of this is how you reach your future goals. You don't always know what the next 5 miles might look like, but if you can see the oil barrel in front of you, then you know exactly where you have to get to. And when you get to that oil barrel, then you can look for the next oil barrel. And that's how we have to look at our big projects. We have to really be able to go step by step, because if we don't break them down, it becomes very easy for us to give up, lose momentum, and just feel like we can't achieve it. And so the oil barrel is a metaphor. It's for connecting one goal to the next. And that's why I have an oil barrel on the left to the right, because that's what we want to be doing. We want to be focusing on just moving forward on what we can see and accomplish. And as long as it's in line with our long-term goals, we're going to be able to achieve that big goal in the future. Now, one other entrepreneur that I came across and studied for this course is John Lee Dumas. And for those of you guys who don't know him, he runs a podcast called Entrepreneur on Fire, puts out a podcast every single day. And he has this book called The Freedom Journal. And this is something that's been raved about. It's considered one of the best goal-setting books out there right now. So I got it for research in this course. And just think, I took a picture of one of the pages, and it says at the top, it's like, in 98 days, I'll have done X. And you can see what he's doing is that he's saying he's connecting today to some far off goal. It's like, in 98 days, I will get this done. My number one focus today is this. That's the second thing. And so this is what you're doing today in order to achieve that far off goal. To get closer to my goal, I will do these 3 things today. By then today, I will have accomplished these things. So you'll see some of this similar framework showing up in the sheets that I've created, where we're really focusing on breaking down our goals, connecting that future idea to the present today. And this is something that he did in his book, and I know his students and people listening to his podcast and have done this have had a lot of success. And so it's really about, it might be simplistic, but these are the things that help people to stick with their goals and execute on them. So it's a reoccurring pattern that came up with Brian Tracy in the book, The One Thing by Brian Keller, and the Freedom Journal. And all these guys are talking about the importance of connecting your goals of today with your future goals to today. And so whenever you start seeing patterns again and again in anything in the world, especially against productivity expert, goal setting experts, you know there's some value in that where we have to be able to do that. And so that's why I thought it was important to bring this into my course right away to really help you understand that what you're working on today has to be connecting with your future. So this is the first keystone habit we want to start developing, is working with the sheets that I've developed to help us connect our future goals to today. Why? Because it connects our oil barrels. And so one of the exercises that I want you to do from this module is to start using your sheets when you're in your sessions, is to really, the opening sheet that I have created for you, the first 5 and the last 15, start using those to open and close your sessions to really help you focus and identify what it is you need to be working on and how to overcome any stumbling blocks you might be facing. Part 3, momentum. So something that science is now showing is that anything that's a project is going to be under 90 days. Anything over 90 days is a vision. And so in the beta course, I had somebody that was developing a video game, and developing a video game is a 2-year vision for them. When something is so far off in the future for us, it's not practical for the mind to wrap its head around it. And so we have to keep breaking things down into micro projects, things that are in the 90-day near-term future, because if we don't, our mind doesn't quite believe it. It's not quite comprehensible. So we always want to be working on things in the under the 90-day mark. And that's going to help us really believe that we can achieve these things. And anything we can't do in 90 days, that's fine. We can put that as part of our vision, but we have to keep deconstructing those bigger long-term goals into 90-day projects and moving through them at that sequence. Now, temporal discounting bias. You guys are like, what the fuck is temporal discounting bias? It's a distance bias, and it's basically the tendency to give greater value towards in the near future versus the far off future. So my goal one day is through my coaching to be able to make $1 million. Now, if I focus on that goal right now, my mind will be like, whoa, like how do I even reach that? Like I'm charging $400 for this course. It's like, how many of those courses would I have to sell in order to make $1 million? Like that number just seems unrealistic based on my current size of my business and how many people follow and my audience. But if I focus instead on like, well, how about in the next course, I get 8 people in it and I want to make $3,000 off the next launch. That becomes a very realistic goal that I can do. Maybe I'll even say like $10,000 because my mind can wrap its head around those numbers. But doing something like $1 million is not realistic. And so we need to reward ourselves with things in the near future that we believe are more accomplishable versus things that are a little bit outside of our reach, because we will give up on those things. If it seems too unrealistic, like we can't get there, the mind is not going to have the motivation to keep moving forward on it. So we need to keep breaking down our goals and our projects into shorter term visions of things that we can believe and we can actually accomplish. And this is why little wins are critical. And I took this image of a girl with a little firecracker. It's not a proper word, firecracker, but the little, I forget what these things are called, but it's one thing, right? We want to be, if we have one win and we can burn through that every single day, that's what we really want to be able to do. If we can focus on these little things, just small blessings each day that we accomplish something, we move forward, and that's what's going to be successful for us. And it's important that we break these down into small pieces that our mind can digest. And if we do that, then we're setting ourselves up for success. And that's why this module is called Keys to Success, because if we do these things again and again over a long enough timeline, we will succeed. So part 4 is defending your calendar. Now, this is something crucial that I wasn't very great at, and it's still something I'm getting a lot better at, but really keeping our calendar on point and locked in where we know exactly when we're working and what we need to achieve. And so your calendar should be something that you can defend in the court of law. So if somebody, for some reason, accused you of a crime in a court of law, you could show what you're working on with your goals, with your projects in your calendar, like, at this time, I was working on X, Y, Z. I was doing this and that. And that's the structure and rigidity that you need to be able to succeed, because it's really going to help you craft your day in a way where you know what you need to get done. So the first thing is you got to time block. You got to find sessions in your day. If you work 9 to 5, you're either working with the morning, which is way more optimal than after work because you'll have less energy, but you're either working with the morning or the evening. And if you don't work 9 to 5, then you're looking at potentially using the first in the morning, that's when the mind is the freshest, most likely to succeed, using that time to work on whatever you need to get done. For me, 7 to 11, 7 to 12, that's my prime time where I like to get a lot of my work done, my deep work done, and from there I move into other things. So that's what you're looking at. You got to find that time block sessions in your calendar where you can work. Then they need to be clearly scheduled. So on Monday, you know exactly what time it is. On Tuesday, it's exactly the same. Wednesday, so you can get into a flow. So there's a pattern weekly that your mind can wrap around. When we don't have to make decisions, they become more habitual. There's less resistance for us to follow through with this. And that's what we want to create, is habits that are deeply ingrained. So you want to schedule Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday the same. And so that way, you know, if you can have it the same every single morning, great. Maybe your calendar doesn't allow that, but you want to clearly schedule the time when you'll be working on your projects and your goals, and do as many sessions as you can. And realistically, 4 or 5 hours a day, that's a lot. Like Tim Ferriss talks about this, where 4 hours of like deep creative work is the max that he can do. And they've done research, like violinists and things like that, they practice about 4 hours. So that's a good amount to be looking at. If you can allocate that much time or a little bit less, that's what you want to be trying to aim for in your calendar. It becomes non-negotiable. When you set these times in your calendar, it's not like, oh, I'll push that to another time. It's like, if Monday 7 to 11 is the time that you're working, that is the time you work. If for some reason something comes up that morning, you have to go for a work or a doctor's appointment, you reschedule that time. It is not something that you just take out of your calendar. This is a big reason why people don't achieve goals, is because they never prioritize it and make time for themselves. So they just delete it from their calendar, like, oh, I'll do it tomorrow. And it never happens. So this is non-negotiable time where you have to get it done. If for some reason you can't work at your set time, you are rescheduling that time. It is like a doctor's appointment. It's a cleaning that you can't avoid to get out of. You have to get it done at some point in time. And the last one is, you got to be prepared going to your sessions. If you are not in the right mental frame of mind and have everything you need to work, your time is not going to be as productive as it possibly can. So being prepared is key. And we get into a little more about that in this slide after this one. Time blocking is about giving disproportionate amount of time to the thing that is going to make a difference in your job or life. Gary Keller, the author of The One Thing. So one thing that I want for you to do with your work sessions is to come in OPT. And OPT is an acronym for off. So when we're working, everything is off. Our phone is on airplane mode. There's no internet. We're turning off all distractions. There's no TV. If you need music to drown things out because you work better way, fine, so be it. But we don't want to be multitasking. We're just focusing on what we need to accomplish in that moment. If we're building a website, we're building a website. If we're doing some kind of design work, we're doing that. We're focusing on what's in front of us, and that's it. Provisions. We want to minimize the amount of times we get up and leave. So that means go to the bathroom beforehand, bring water, food, snacks into your work session. If you're sitting down for 4 hours, you want to sit down for 4 hours. The only time you want to get up is maybe on the hour for 5 minutes to walk around, stretch out a little bit, but you don't want to be like, oh, I'm hungry and go downstairs and get a snack right now. Like everything you need, any excuse that your mind can come up with to stop doing work, you want to be proactive with that, anticipate it, and come in prepared. So that way, during your 4-hour session, if you get into this amazing creative spell, you can sit for 4 hours and not even get up once if you don't need to. And tell others. This is a big thing when we're working. Depending on your work environment, you might be living with your significant other and they might distract you. You might be in the office and people come into your cubicle, whatever it be. Tell people like, hey, like, I'm doing these 3-4 hours. This is really important to me. I need this space for me to work on my own. And when you tell other people why it's important to you, you're bringing them onto your team. They become like a cheerleader and supporter. And they're like, hey, it's like, how did that session go for you? Like, what are you working on? They become more captivated by your project. And so you can enlist people in what you're doing as opposed to them being a distraction for you. So telling others is key part of this. So that's opt, off, provisions, and telling others to maximize your work sessions. Part 4, choosing what to work on. So this is what I talked about earlier in the module, how this is something that people have a tough time figuring out what it is that they need to do. And so what do we choose to work on? We all have a limited amount of time. And so what we choose is important, because if we can do the most important things, we can really ensure that we achieve our goals faster. So Brian Tracy from Eat That Frog, he says, complete your most difficult task first. If you have 2 frogs, eat the ugliest one first. That's Brian Tracy. From the One Thing, they had something a little bit different but similar. It's called the focusing question. And the focusing question is, what's the one thing I can do such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary? And I like this because it's a frame of like, how will everything be easier or unnecessary for me? And you can start thinking of it like, what's going to help me move forward the quickest? It's definitely a good question to pose to yourself to help you identify what needs to get done. For me though, sorry, there's one more quote. Doing the most important thing is always the most important thing, Gary Keller. For me, I prefer DIS. And that's what 20% of my actions will give me 80% of the results. Maybe that's because I have like a mathematical, logical mind. But I like, if I'm thinking about 80%, I know it's something that's going to give me a lot of movement forward on what I'm trying to accomplish with minimal action. So it's like, what's going to give me that 80-20 effect? And so whether it's the focusing question, whether it's eating that frog, whether it's the 80-20 principle, it doesn't matter which one you prefer or what you like more. It's just that when you go to work into your session, the first thing that you do is you eat that frog, or you do the 80-20 thing, the thing that's going to have the biggest impact for you on that day, or the thing that's going to move the easiest or remove the most amount of resistance for you to move forward. So those are the things you want to be focusing on when you sit down into your sessions. Whichever one works for you is great, but figure out what it is, because when you sit down, doing the most important thing is always the most important thing. And so this is the second reoccurring pattern that I noticed among all these books: Eat That Frog, the focusing question, and the One Thing, or Tim Ferriss with DIS, is that it's about putting your highest priority tasks first. And that's what we want to be working on when we sit down into our sessions each and every day. Now, there are a few cardinal rules for task selection that will also help with this process. And not all tasks are equal. And this is from a checklist from the One Thing. And so people think if they're busy, if they just put their calendar full of stuff and they get stuff done, that they're being productive. That is not true. Being busy does not mean you're moving forward on your goals. You can be doing a lot of things that are completely irrelevant from what you need to accomplish, and it feels like you're getting stuff done. Even sometimes, like, I feel like I procrastinate by reading. It's one of those things where I'm reading a book that's not connected to what I'm writing about or what I'm building right now. And it's like I feel like I'm doing something, but I'm just keeping myself busy in a productive way. And so it's easy to fool ourselves, and we have to be aware of that. Second, don't play the checkoff game. Don't just do a bunch of things that are on your list of things to do, but they're not going to have an impact on growing revenue or getting you new clients or moving you forward with building your business or launching your website or designing your logo. These are all things that you have to be aware of. Doing low value things are not going to be of service to you. And go extreme. Go after things that are going to have a big impact on you. This is where you're going to get out of your comfort zone. These will be the more difficult, challenging things, but that's what you have to do. And saying no. Saying no is so critical because there's so many things that we can be doing, and it's really identifying what we have to focus on. And this might mean saying no to social engagement, to friends, to things like that. We have to be willing to make sacrifices to achieve our goals. So be prepared to say no, and if you have to, even practice it. And so one of my favorite jobs from Steve Jobs, for quotes from Steve Jobs, is this one. It's actually on my wall behind me. People think focus means saying yes to the thing you've got to focus on. But that's not what it means at all. It means saying no to the 100 other good ideas that there are. You have to pick carefully. I'm actually as proud of the things we haven't done as the things I have done. Innovation is saying no to 1,000 things. And this is a really powerful quote, and it really helps you understand what focus means. And so focus is about saying no, because there's always going to be opportunities thrown at us. There's always things that we can do. And if we say yes to many things, we're not going to have time for things that really matter. So learning how to say no is really the key to focusing and moving forward with the projects and things that are important to you. So the last part, this is just a wrap up. And so there's an exercise that I want you guys to do for the next 5 weeks. And I want you to choose one day. And whether that's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, it's a day of the week. I don't care which one you choose. But the key thing is to have it consistent, because typically we have the same schedule on that day. And for the next 5 weeks, I want you to monitor how you spend your time. And the objective of this exercise is to be aware of how we utilize our time. Where are there gaps in our calendar that we're not using up? Where are we wasting time? Where we're not being efficient? Are we more productive in the morning, evening, etc.? But I want you to choose one day. If it's Wednesday, choose that day. And every Wednesday for the next 5 weeks, monitor how you're spending that time. Just be really thorough and keep track of your time throughout that day. Now, the other exercise that I want you to do, I just talked about the time audit. So start your Keystone habit, and that's using your sheets to start and finish your work sessions. We talked about a few different things in this module, the importance of connecting your goals to the future. We talked about selecting the most important thing. These are all things that are in those sheets, and these are Keystone habits that can really help move you forward. So I've created these sheets for you to really start giving you leverage, and I've done a lot of work for you to really be able to start maximizing how you're spending your time. And last is your time block sessions. So when you go into them, I want you off, and that's off, prepared, and telling others to ensure that you're not being distracted. So if you can incorporate these things into your repertoire for the next week, so basically opt into your work session, start using your Keystone habits, and the time audit is kind of like a separate thing that you do for a whole day. But basically, if you can start doing these 3 exercises for the next week, that's going to help you start moving forward with your goals. And so these are the exercises for Module 2. Really quickly, here's a list of the resources that I use for this. The One Thing, Eat That Frog, Freedom Journal, The Power of Habit, and 4-Hour Chef, Tim Ferriss. And then Peak Athlete, Todd Herman, and Temporal Discounting Bias was from Wikipedia. So that's the resources in a nutshell. I know in the first module, or in the beta course, a lot of people ask for the resources in case they want to go plug in and discover things for themselves. So at all the modules at the end, I have the resource list for you now where I got my information. So thank you so much for tuning into the second module. If you have any questions, hit me up with an email or a text, and I'll be happy to help you out.